Fantastic, cool. Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks everyone for coming and yeah, just chiming on from two very fantastic talks that we've seen so far this morning with a lot of really interesting ideas and interesting contributions. I'm definitely going to try and see if we can bring back to my colleagues in my team for further discussion. So my name is Shomari. I am the Senior Manager for the new Research Culture and Communities team at Wellcome, and my team is embedded within Wellcome's brand new Research Environment team. Just for anyone with any audio-visual impairments, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm a Black man sitting in a small glass box overlooking London with a green background. I'm wearing a beige quilted top. Today I'm going to be going through with you a little introduction into some of the work that Wellcome did with the Reimagine Research campaign over the course of the last year, and give you a little bit of a sneak peek into some of the high-level thoughts that we're thinking about for how we can take the proposals and the suggestions from that festival into concrete actions and changes that we can actually implement into how we fund great ideas and great things and great people who are all practicing good and inclusive research cultures. Just in case anyone on the call doesn't know, and I'll just see if I can actually mute this because I think that might have been in the way. Who are we? So Wellcome is a charitable foundation that supports science to serve the urgent health challenges facing everybody. And we want everyone to benefit from science's potential to try and improve health and save lives. And within that, central to our mission is, I guess, the underlying principle that sustainable, innovative, open, diverse and inclusive research cultures are integral for enabling people and ideas to thrive in the best way. This leads me to this commonly used word that we've heard quite a lot today of, I'm sure when everyone sees the word excellence or thinks about the concept of excellence, this traditionally often comes into things related to, you know, strong press author publications in high impact journals and a very steady stream of grant funding. But in contrast, the purpose of my new team is to see if we can redefine what research excellence is, thinking that research excellence shouldn't just encompass great ideas and the outputs of research, but also more, well, in my opinion, more importantly, how the research is done, which chimes along with a lot of the other comments that we've heard from today so far. So I won't spend, I guess, too much time discussing the ins and outs of all the results, because I think a lot of this data has been disseminated by other colleagues of mine and is also present on our website. But I'm just going to kind of do a run through of some of the high-level facts and figures that came out of the a lot of the research culture studies that our global policy team did over the course of the last year. And in particular, the findings from our report about what researchers think about the culture of work that they work in. So, I mean, obviously, as you know, was covered a bit earlier, most people seem to be very proud to work in researchers, but in particular, there seems to be some key issues around how secure people feel in actually pursuing a stable research career. So 84% feeling that they're very proud to work in research, and then 29% feeling very secure to actually pursue a career in it. The underlying issues for that have also been discussed already, but tend to lead to things more around the unhealthy competition that we see in research, fears about bullying, harassment, and bad mental health. So many researchers thinking that it's, you know, the competition, the hyper competition that's created by research, so publish or perish kind of mentality, and also people witnessing and also, you know, being on the receiving end of, you know, bullying and harassment concerns, and as a result, you know, people feeling the need to actually seek medical attention for mental health issues brought about by these concerns, which definitely isn't good enough. This problem tends to be exacerbated for women and minority ethnic researchers, who unfortunately tend to be more likely to have experienced bullying and harassment in the workplace, and have also raised more concerns and feeling that these concerns haven't been adequately dealt with. If you're a woman, you're more likely to feel that your concerns. And yeah, the same also goes for women and non-binary researchers as well, who have also said that they are more likely to seek help for mental health issues brought about by their working cultures than men, which again is very sad. As has also been covered already, a lot of this comes down to how the research environment and research culture has favoured publications and favored grant funding over, I guess, the things like research integrity and the I guess the novelty of the ideas coming out of the research and the creativity of it. And so even though most researchers are telling us that they, the research cultures that they want to thrive in and they want to create are ones that are creative and interesting and, do research in a really, cool, new and novel ways, the reality is actually that's not what ends up happening. And in particular, 1 in 5 junior researchers and students have felt pressurized by the supervisors to produce a particular result in order to achieve a certain publication. So, and then that also leads into, again, some of the other stuff that we discussed about already about saying that the knock-on effect of that is that a very small percentage of researchers feel that these current metrics have a positive impact on research culture, thereby ensuing that the vast majority think it actually hasn't had a very good impact on research culture at all. And I think a standard thing that I think James covered kind of earlier has been this idea about poor management practices. So, it's no guarantee that someone that's excellent at bringing in great grant funding and, being a pioneer in science or academia is necessarily going to be the best manager. Even though people who do research often tend to think that actually they have got quite good skills at managing diverse and inclusive teams, but quite a lot haven't received any training in doing that. So I think if I was able to ask this question again, I'd love to be able to see a bit more data about the researchers who are working under the people answering these questions and to hear what they think about. Is it that, people think that people that actually work inside these research groups think that the management practices of their leads are very good? Who knows? And those being managed often miss out on critical aspects of good management and only half receive feedback on their performance. So again, there's no real standard frameworks or metrics for how good performance or appraisals or academic progress is tracked other than these really hard metrics that we tend to often rely on. So that wasn't the only bit of work that the policy and campaigns team did. We also did quite a lot of work engaging with the communities with our town hall events. So we did 9 town hall events speaking to well over 760 plus people. And it wasn't just for researchers, it was also to do with people supporting research, research managers, students, and so on. And these were all just basically facilitated group discussions where with Wellcome representatives kind of standing in by just listening to hear inputs from individuals about what they thought about the cultures that they worked in. And the findings of these reports were very similar to what we saw in the wider survey. Typical concerns around research, around the problems people have with research culture, around unstable contracts and careers, bullying, harassment, competition, bad mental health, poor gender inequality, lack of recognition or promotion. So all of these factors, I think, speak quite openly to what we know quite a lot of in general bad practice in research. And I think what was remarkable about this was just how consistent the wording was across all the different town halls that we did, that these issues kept coming up again and again and again. And I think this quote in particular was I found quite sad. So after 15 years of short-term funding, I had 2 3-month periods of bridging funding, not much fun with a mortgage to pay. We also delayed starting a family due to this insecurity, which is something I regret. And yeah, this speaks to a lot of the concerns around how research up to now has been funded, often very short-term, smaller grants that didn't necessarily lead to much sustainable support for people to maintain their lives with, which in and of itself can cause mental health problems and make people feel that they're unable to stay in research for the long term. In addition to all of that other work, we also used our Café Culture kits, which, by the way, these are all still available online. So if anyone's interested in running a Café Culture session for themselves, all the resources are on the Wellcome website. And yeah, this gave us the opportunity to reach to even more researchers. So the 500 plus signups globally, which was really exciting. And yeah, this was more around getting institutions to think about what are some of the practical solutions that they can think of themselves for how they can improve research culture in their own environments, that we could then monitor to see if there's any things that we could adopt, but also others can share too. And it's all completely open source, so everyone can look into this now and see what suggestions are put forward and try these things for yourselves. I think the importance of this is quite clear when we're thinking about some of the comments raised earlier about how research culture really should come from, well, maintaining good research culture really should come from a place of thinking about the environment that your teams are primarily in. It shouldn't necessarily always be that it's that all research culture led initiatives are from the top down. We really have to think about both bottom up and top down approaches, and left to right and back to back, back to front. Because yeah, oftentimes more than not, we see that it's not necessarily, whilst the intention of the institution to have a healthy culture is often there, sometimes this doesn't necessarily always trickle down into people's individual environments. And then this kind of all culminated in our Reimagine Research Festival, which if you haven't seen any of the webinars from this, I highly recommend you do so. They're all present on the Wellcome Web website as well. And this featured well over 1,350 delegates from 56 different countries, all talking about their own interpretations of research culture, and not just from basic sciences. We also had individuals from humanities, ethics, public engagement, and the clinical fields as well. So that's kind of like a overview of all the things that we've kind of done before. So what are we kind of aiming for the future, and what do we actually want to come of all of this? Irene mentioned this thought cloud that we presented as part of our report from a lot of the information that we collected. And yeah, I think it does show quite clearly the kind of cultures that people really want to see out a positive research culture, something that's more supportive, creative, diverse, fair, collaborative and secure. And in particular, we want to try and make sure that any initiatives that we do are sustainable and reinforce the right kind of peoples going through the academic pipeline. And we're using it to try and hold ourselves accountable to make sure that everything that we're doing, everything that we're planning only seeks to further these outcomes rather than hinder them or cause any other problems on the side. The really good news about this is that we've actually gained quite a lot of momentum on a lot of this work, and so we've worked with other funders, including UKRI, to advocate for culture change across the higher education sector, including current work to review the researcher review concordats and implementing aspects of the resume for researchers into our forms. And we've also pushed for and gained quite a lot recently some traction on this from the political stage with the government's Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategies, People and Cultural Strategies. So quite a big mouthful. Which is being led by the by the new Minister for Science, George Freeman MP, which is quite exciting. What actions individually do we kind of have to take in thinking about research culture? So this is a kind of slide just talking about some of the things that we're doing. So we've already made a start on changing our practices with regards to our bullying harassment policy. So we implemented that in 2018, and we're gradually building and we're gradually using that and iterating on it to make sure that we're not only taking allegations of bullying harassment seriously, but we're also making sure that we're putting that into our practice to make sure that individuals who sustain a bullying harassment allegation and it's upheld by the universities, that funding for those individuals isn't forthcoming. We're also trying to build systems which incentivize the time and energy required to do research well, both in local operation and across the system. So that's primarily about how we're thinking about making sure that inclusive research cultures are the minimum standard by which applications for grants are assessed and approved, so that any grant application that is funded by Wellcome has the inclusion of research culture inside the assessment criteria. So you can't get a Wellcome grant without thinking about how you're going to sustain and grow an inclusive culture. And beyond that, we're also trying to think in the future about how we can support the research community to make these changes locally with Wellcome as a partner. And I hopefully have a bit more to say about some of those kind of initiatives in the new year once my team is fully up to speed. So, Wellcome's vision for the future. upcoming topics, we'll also be looking into including and tweaking the process for our committee recruitment processes. So we're really trying to think about, actually, sorry, I've realized I've skipped a little bit. I'll quickly just say, read out the bits from this slide. So in our first suite of actions, we positively influenced research culture. So we've designed some new open schemes for discovery research funding to incentivize the skills necessary to create positive research environments. So that's similar to what I was saying in the previous slide about how we've included upholding research cultures and the provision for continual professional development as part of the things that institutions have to provide to researchers if they're getting funding. And we've also updated our funding policies and are currently redesigning our application processes. And I can say just beyond that, that some other things that we're thinking about or that we're looking into is about how we assess how we recruit and develop our funding committees, so making recommendations to Wellcome for which applications to be funded, how we do recruitment, how we provide equitable pre-application advice to particular groups that need more support, what kind of best practice training can we create, so how can we create communities of practice around research culture, and how can we encourage more researchers to learn from each other as to what works. And critically, and I think this kind of links into a lot of what Irene was thinking about, was talking about in her talk earlier, how we actually create sustainable and healthy metrics of success from our grants that clearly show the importance of the behaviours that we want our researchers to be displaying, and rewarding individuals for doing the right things and for being supportable people. And yeah, and I've kind of mentioned it earlier already, but we've also got a brand new research environment team. So my team isn't the only team that's kind of looking at this. We've also got a team dedicated to open access, a team dedicated to bioethics, and a team dedicated to public and research-led engagement. So all of this together is further evidence of Wellcome's commitment to assembling and ensuring that research culture is fully embedded into the work that we do. And our ultimate goal is to ensure that the manner of which Wellcome-funded research is done truly incorporates everything that you've seen here and everything that I've mentioned. So I've kind of whizzed through these slides. I hope if any friends from UKRI are on the call, they don't mind me pinching this line from them, but I think it demonstrates quite well the contributions that kind of go into making great academic research happen. And so the things that we see at the top of the slide, so things like publications, awards, prizes, leaderships, those are just the tip of the visibility of contributions that we see usually coming into research. Whereas actually, we want to try and think of, and the things that I'm actively planning in with my team now, is how we can make sure that we reward, support, sustain, and improve all of the other, the visibility of all the other contributions that go into research, and making sure that academics all over the country and all over the world know that, one, Wellcome cares about this, and two, you will be actively supported by us for taking these things into account in your research planning and design. And I think that is about it. I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, that was quite quick whistle stop tour about what we're saying and thinking, but yeah, happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Shomari, thank you very much. It's fascinating, and it's great to see what a major funder is doing on these issues, and that they're being proactive, and also recognizing that this is an issue for us all. So not just taking their own actions, but also linking up with other organizations. I mean, we've worked with the Wellcome Trust ourselves for a while now on these issues. So yes, we have a number of questions coming from in the Q&A stream, and I'll just pull them out. We have questions from Elizabeth. In terms of organisations and individuals demonstrating their engagement with issues of research integrity and culture, any thoughts on how to write a strong research integrity statement?
Cool.
You know, what, I mean, from the Wellcome perspective, perhaps, you know, as a funder, what are you looking for in those?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of information on our website around the expectations that we have of researchers and individuals who are applying for Wellcome funding, and so I think where possible, it's about just trying to incorporate much of the stuff that we've heard today, about really making sure that people's contributions to research are supported, people are trained in healthy environments, they're provided with the right kind of training to develop their careers, and that people are just really supported, and that if we're not working on the assumptions of how people feel about the academic environments they're in. We're actually putting in steps to go and ask people and not just assuming that things are perfect and things are all right. So I know that isn't a very specific answer about what could go into a specific research integrity statement, but I think it's just more about being a bit more human-centered in our approach to the people we're recruiting and how we're training people that I think we want to see more institutions taking responsibility for.
Thank you. I think that's a really good point. And the more diverse and long-established researchers we can have, the better, because that means more diverse perspectives looking at the problems that face our society. Thank you. The issues of research culture can often seem very big, and we have a question in the Q&A stream. If there's kind of one thing that any individuals could do differently, without the support, without the resources of an institution behind them, without backing a funder, what's are there sort of any small scale changes that you could recommend that we can all, if we're collective action, what could everyone do a little bit more of?
Yeah, I love this question because it comes up quite a lot, and I think it speaks to just how complex research culture as a concept and as an area kind of is. My advice would be probably to start small. So start and things like the Café Culture resources are out there, and we've made them open access and put them on the website so that people can really use them and see if they can get a better idea for some of the small scale changes that people can make to their groups. I was speaking to a researcher from speaking to a colleague from UKRI the other day, and she raised a concern that sometimes top-down initiatives about academic cultures can often fall flat of actually achieving the full gains they want to achieve. But people's individual research environments, the actual groups that they're in, might operate a bit differently or a bit to the side of what the actual wider institution is doing. And so really, I think if we're being honest about us taking this as a matter of importance, I think it's best to start ask individuals in your group how they really do feel about working in their institution, and if you're in a position where you feel like it's inappropriate for you to be asking those questions, get an independent mediator that can do it with you. Make it a fun session, make it a way in which you can kind of get a better idea about the different needs of the individuals working with your group, and include everybody in there too. It doesn't have to just be your direct reports, it can also be students, support staff, everybody. It's about how we're making the environment itself more welcoming and more inclusive for others. So I think that's probably the best start. Before you get into the things about funding initiatives, wider support from the institutions, all the other things that are also important too.
That's really important. Thank you. Let's see what other questions we got. Do research funding bodies keep an overview of inappropriate authorship when looking into funding applications? Now, that may not fall within your research culture brief, so if it doesn't, I was happy to contribute.
Yeah, I wrote that question down because it's a good one, and I'm going to find out and see, because it's something that I think is really important and would speak quite a lot to a funding commitment to make sure that these things are changing. So yeah, I'd be interested in seeing something like that.
Okay, if I can just come in on that question from William. Firstly, roughly every year or so, institutions will make a sort of annual return to funders saying, in relation to projects that you funded, what's gone wrong, what's gone right. And lots of sort of financial audit returns, but equally there'll be stuff about if there have been any cases of research misconduct and authorship, deliberate actions to deny authorship where it's warranted or give authorship where it's not warranted is treated as research misconduct. So in that sense, if it's authorship problems as a result of misconduct, funders would be notified in annual returns. And also, when an investigation to a specific case of misconduct closes, relevant disclosures are made to involved bodies such as the journals and publishers involved and the external funder. Now, I'm not aware of the Wellcome's policies on how they treat grant applicants who have been found guilty of research misconduct, but in general terms, institutions funders reserve the right to deny funding or withdraw existing funding if their grant holders are found guilty of professional misconduct, and that also ties into the Wellcome's policy on bullying and harassment and the like. But obviously, the funders themselves have policies and procedures on their website, so I advise you to look at there. One thing I should say is authorship disputes, so problems with authorship that aren't the result of misconduct, aren't reported to funders, because that's issues of poor practice or disagreement rather than misconduct, and it shouldn't be criminalized, let's call it that. A couple more questions I think we've got time for. On your last slide, a colleague mentions that you mentioned peer review. Should institutions be doing more to support researchers to learn how to peer review to a high standard?
I would say so, yes. And it's one of the reasons why we've adjusted the criteria of what we're looking for in our peer review forms that we send to external peer reviewers. We've also included guidance about with information primarily being focused on the proposal and the research in front of them, rather than things like about the candidate, which tend to be more subjective. And so I'm sure there are other funders that are also, and other institutions that are also looking at models of peer review like that. But I think definitely providing support to people on peer reviewing applications, providing fair assessments of applications and following the criteria that's actually being asked for is always very welcome.
Brilliant, thank you. I mean, I think peer review is a very interesting topic because it's essential to good practice in research. But funders, as it's done, you know, for publishers, or in case of grant applications for grant funders, institutions themselves can sometimes feel, well, we're kind of tapped out with training our people to do the stuff that they do within our auspices, so it can kind of sort of get lost in the system a bit. That's fascinating, thank you. So I just need to see a few more questions have come through. Right. The question about the Reimagine Research Festival, are you planning to do more things like that? And I don't know if that's from someone who attended it or who is now busy going through the recording since you mentioned it, but are sort of those events going to be on the Wellcome's calendar in the future?
Yes, absolutely. It's in the pipeline. We're still trying to revise our new engagement strategy. And so, yeah, in fact, for anyone that wasn't aware, Wellcome underwent a massive strategy review and restructure over the last year. And so a lot of the teams in Wellcome are still very in flux, trying to figure out our internal strategies and how the work that we're doing contributes to Wellcome's wider mission. And so we'll have a lot more information to share about future campaigns and outreach activities and stuff like that, and future engagement in the new year.
Brilliant, that's great. And I think you mentioned sort of working with other funders, and one thing that struck me about your presentation is come from the chat that the iceberg picture that you borrowed from UCAR, which I think is a great picture. I've stolen it myself in the past. How do we raise the iceberg out? How do we make those other sort of contributions not only visible but also valued? And I think that speaks to broader questions. This is where I'm sort of layering my own question on top of the one for the audience member, which is, you know, so often how to, you know, the research is seen as, well, you publish a paper, a multi-authored paper, going back to the question we had earlier, in a gold standard journal, and it has to be a positive result and, you know, funded by the right fund. How do we sort of not only expand on making contributions more difficult, but different ways of doing good research and being recognized for doing good research visible? I mean, you know, what's your take on this?
It's a big topic, and it's something that internally I'm thinking about quite a lot, especially as we think about how we create fairer research metrics and what success looks like. At risk of being attacked by someone from the data team any minute now, I can't say too much about where some of those conversations have gotten to just yet. But to me, it really comes down to the incentives. We have to both see and reward and ask for information about good behavior. We have to recognize, we have to provide avenues for people to provide more details about their contributions to things, and ways of which we can track that information back into, you know, helping people further their careers, independent of, you know, the individual. I guess what I'm really trying to say here is I really want us to get to the point that we're thinking, when we say team science, we think about collaboration, we think about activities, we really are thinking about that in the broad sense of the word, rather than just particular individuals. And so by providing systems and ways in which people can report that information to us, that to me might be a really, really good way in which we can definitely get some more traction and allow people to shine and show their contributions to brilliant research.
Thank you, that's really interesting. I think you just answered the question I'm going to put to you, which is how do we incentivize this? Is really useful. One final question from Jenny. How many people in your team in the Wellcome are sort of working on research culture and RI topics broadly? How many of there are you for such a funder?
So I'm a brand new team. So right now it's just me and one other person, but I'm going to be hiring 2 more in the new year. And I'm sitting in within a wider department in research environment, of which there's about 15 of us. And then we also have the Wellcome Culture, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion team, which is also another which we work alongside of to ensure that things like our funding practices and our policies and Wellcome's general activities are diversity inclusive. And so, yeah, there's quite a lot of people working on diversity inclusion work and culture work at Wellcome, definitely more so than there were last year or the year before that, or any time prior, in fact.
Absolutely, it's certainly, I think, a growing field. I know that other major funds have similar teams working on these issues. So for those who are coming away from these talks, they're thinking, gosh, there are a lot of problems. There are a lot of people working on this stuff, and you're not alone. So we're just about to hit 12, and I appreciate that some of you have been sitting here for 2 hours patiently listening to us and putting up with the technical issues, which we do apologize. So thank you so much. So in closing, I'd like to thank Irene and Shomari, our speakers today, for their brilliant talks. I thank the UK Radio staff who helped make this webinar happen. I thank you, the audience. You've been absolutely great. Please do come along. We'd love to see you again the next time. Now, the next webinar will be in February. I haven't set the date yet, but we'll be doing that soon, on research integrity, good practice in practice-based research. We'll send a booking link to that shortly, and in the next few days we'll be circulating links to today's slides and the videos as well, once we've sort of edited them, put titles on them and everything else. For those of you who are research integrity specialists at UK area institutions, we're continuing our virtual roundtables. The next one, which is next Wednesday, is full, but we're sending out invitations for more in the current series, and if you're interested in attending, do please get in touch. And as I put in the chat, our virtual annual conference will be taking place 25th and 26th of May next year, free to attend. So please do put that date in your diary, and I'll send you some more details shortly. Finally, you've been a really enthusiastic audience. It's been great to hear from you today. If you've been sort of fired up by what you've heard today and we're thinking, what can I do about this? Well, there'll be places in your institution that are already talking about this, but also UK Rio is a charity, and our work is supported by a small team of staff and an awful lot of volunteers. So if you're interested in volunteering with us at all, please have a visit to our website, ukrio.org, and pop us a message on the contact form. So thank you very much today for coming along today. I hope you enjoyed today's webinars. My apologies again for the earlier technical issues, and thank you so much for bearing with us. Have a nice lunch break and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Thank you very much, everyone.